there's a moment right before you say yes to something that you shouldn't. One more project at work, one more carpool for the kids. And before you say yes, you feel it a tightening in your chest or a flash of dread, like a split second thought of like, I can't take one more thing. And then you override it. There's a really good reason why high achievers keep getting stuck in that cycle. And that's what we're going to solve today. Hey, welcome back. I'm Dr. Alex Korb, and I'm here with my head of outreach, Amy.
Oh,
We're excited to talk more about a key aspect of setting boundaries that nobody really talks about, that we don't focus on enough. And it's particularly challenging for a lot of high achievers. And that's why this episode is called The Step Before Setting Boundaries That Nobody Talks About. And if you haven't listened to the last episode, the last conversation that we had about this, you definitely should. I gave you 6 phrases for communicating boundaries clearly without over explaining, and to be able to set your boundaries in a way so you don't feel guilty afterwards. And that's genuinely helpful. And sometimes I know I've struggled with communicating boundaries in the moment. You just get tripped up. And so you end up, overcommitting yourself and agreeing to a project that you weren't really that excited about, or to a deadline that creates a little more stress than you wanted. And sometimes it's really just about knowing what words to say and preparing them ahead of time so that in the moment, boom, it just comes out the right way. But for most high achievers, and I know for myself for a lot of the time, it's not about the words. It's not like there's some magic spell. Like you just say these words, and then boom, everyone respects your boundaries, and you're la di da in a land of like unicorn and rainbows, and everything becomes easy. You can't communicate a boundary clearly unless you know you have one, or where exactly that boundary is. And most high achievers are surprisingly bad at that. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Amy, do you ever do you ever feel like you're bad at knowing where your boundaries are, and you only notice it after they've been crossed?
yeah, I do feel that way sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I am crossing boundaries myself just by letting them extend
Mm.
so far when they shouldn't have been.
Yeah. I mean, and I think I've had this feeling in the past, I don't know about you, where like you're worried about someone crossing a boundary and you're hoping that they respect your boundary. Does that ever happen to you too?
Yeah, it can be hard to set boundaries because you don't even know if they will be respected. And then if they're not, then you just look silly. Unless you know, I guess, how to uphold those boundaries. But for me, yeah, that's definitely a fear. With
Yeah. Well, and like upholding those boundaries, that's a third step. And I think we're going to have another conversation after this. But like this one is really just about like knowing where they are in the first place. That's why it's so crucial to realize like the communicating, the saying, the words It's not some magic spell that you cast. There's work that can go into it ahead of time. Doesn't really take a lot of work, but just awareness so that you're not just left hoping and praying that the magic words that you said work.
Okay.
And one thing, one analogy that I'm reminded of a lot of times when I'm working with clients who feel like they're overextended and on the edge of burnout and feeling resentful for all of the stuff that they agreed to or are doing for their colleagues or their boss or their employees or their spouse or their kids. And it's exhausting and overwhelming. And they're aware that this is unsustainable, that they're, headed for a crash or they're just feeling like I can't do this anymore. And what I like to have them think about is just imagine you're driving down the freeway and your brakes stop working. It's a scary, frightening situation. It's important though to realize that there's limited options of what you can do like right then. You can, downshift, you can try and find a runaway truck off ramp and you could use the emergency brake, you could try and pump the brakes, like whatever it is. Like you're just hoping that it's not terrible, right?
Okay.
Okay, if I scratch my car, whatever, like I'm just trying to avoid a terrible outcome. Now, if this is the first time that happened, whatever, you do what you can, you get to the side of the road and you're like, whew, glad it wasn't catastrophic. What you don't want to do is then be like, okay, well, glad I'm out of that situation. Let me just hop back onto the road and start driving again. Like, no, like you should probably get that checked out or figure out what is going on there. And if it was the very first time that it happened, it might be understandable why you were optimistic. Oh, let me just try, driving to work. I'm late for a meeting, whatever. But if it isn't the first time that it happened, then you are participating in the problem if you don't do something else about it. The issue with a lot of high achievers is that they don't want to focus on their limits. I know for a long time, like, no, I don't want to think that my confidence is a limit or my emotions are a limit or my energy or my connections or money, whatever it is. We don't want to think we have limits. And so optimistically, you're like, oh, yeah, maybe it can work this time. But if the same pattern keeps happening over and over again, you might want to revisit that. And when it comes to something like your car brakes not working, that problem is very obvious. It's very obvious that this shouldn't be happening, that this is wrong and this is catastrophic. And it's very obviously it's uncomfortable, but it's very easy to mobilize all of your attention and effort to try and solve that problem. The real issue, though, was 3 days ago when you were driving and you heard a little rattling in the car and you told yourself, well, that's probably nothing. And again, if this had never happened before, okay, that's a completely reasonable assumption. But if it keeps happening, well, don't wait until you're in the catastrophic situation. You have to listen and acknowledge that little rattling sound that is telling you, like, hey, you're about to have a huge problem.
So you're saying that like when we don't set and like keep our boundaries that we are just keeping ourselves in like a catastrophic situation.
Well, yeah, a lot of times it's that you have a boundary, but you're not clear actually at all where that boundary is. I think last time I talked about another driving analogy where like the the way that our engineers have designed mountain roads is not just, oh, you have a road and then a cliff.
Uh-huh.
Like if you keep driving off the edge of a cliff, like, oh, well, that's pretty clear that you've crossed the boundary. But like, if you're aware of where that boundary is, well, then you can draw a line at the side of the road, just real subtle, not dramatic. Like, hey, people, probably stay on this side of the line. And then you can have a little rumble strip when it gets closer to crossing that line. Like, are you sure you want to go here? And then you can have a guardrail that really stops people. But like, how do you know where to put all of that if you don't know where your boundary actually is? And part of the reason why high achievers struggle with this is that pushing through discomfort is literally what got you here. Like, did you, to get into UCLA and to get into grad school, like, did you have to sometimes ignore your discomfort and anxiety?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know for myself, I have a lot of emotions. And like, sometimes those emotions are getting in the way of my goals. And in order to get into the Ivy League, in order to like get good grades, and in order to study for a test when you just want to go to a party, in order to take care of your kids when you just want to go to sleep. Like you have a lot of emotions that are telling you, like, hey, this is a bad idea or whatever. And you're just like, shut up. I got to do this. And we can train our brain to ignore our emotions. And that is a very helpful skill to have. Because there are other people who might be as smart and talented as you, but they didn't learn how to ignore their emotions. And so they're just doing whatever their emotions were telling them. And they, didn't get the job that you got. They didn't get the promotion that you got. So it's important to realize like this skill of ignoring your emotions is a talent that you have. And it helps you get where you are right now. But if right now your car is careening down the freeway, well, then that skill is part of the problem. And this is also where high achievers sometimes have an issue of being optimistic or having a strong sense of self efficacy, their belief, like, oh, I can figure this out. Because maybe they might even say in that car example analogy, like, oh, no, I've found a perfect solution. Like, every time my brakes stop working, I just, pull the emergency brake and I downshift and I know where all the truck runaway off ramps are. And so I just, I'm good at driving. So I avoid all that. And so they end up being in these situations where like they're on the edge of burnout and they're like, oh, no, no, it's totally fine. I just like, when I get burned out, well, then I just like go on a vacation and then I'm fine. And then it's like, oh, but then you're stuck in the same patterns over and over again. I mean, do you notice that in other people, at least, where you see friends going through these same issues over and over again?
Yeah, I think for people who really want to do their best and who really try hard in everything that they do, they really believe in their full potential all of the time. And I think that can be damaging sometimes because we cannot perform at our full potential all the time. But because we've like seen our full potential, I think that we have like hope that we can always perform that way. But sometimes we're just not in our prime.
Yeah. Well, and that actually, that concept that you can't always perform at your full potential is both true and wrong. Like, what you can't do all the time is perform at the best that you've ever done. Like, if that's the standard that you set for yourself, that's often unhelpful. Like, there's a reason why Olympic athletes don't set a world record or a personal best every time. Like, hey, man, you set a world record last year. Why are you slacking? Like, no, like comparing yourself to some previous version of yourself isn't always helpful because it may not be what you're capable of right now. Same with comparing yourself to other people. What other people might be able to do, they might not have the same limitations. And it can sometimes be helpful and inspiring to compare yourself to some previous version of yourself if it motivates you or gives you more confidence to take action. So that's why we do it. We learned when you were in high school or in college, you're like, oh, well, you know, that time I just stayed awake all night and I succeeded. So like I should be able to do that now, right? If it helps you take action and give you belief in your own abilities, that can be useful. And then that's why it got trained in as a habit into your habit circuit. But oftentimes, habits get trained in as a teenager in our 20s or 30s. But now, when you're in your 40s, as I am, or later, your limitations are different and your life circumstances are different. Even your values are different, but your habits are still trained the same way. So your habits are still like, oh, well, this is fine. I could just stay up all night and get this done. But now you're like, oh, but I can't do that because before I could stay up all night and just drink a cup of coffee and be fine. And now that's not possible. But also now I have kids and I have to deal with their stuff. But your brain, the habit circuit in your brain is often programmed to what your limits used to be. And that is its arbitrary metric that's often unhelpful. But what is true is that it is possible to perform at your best right now, but it's crucial to understand, well, what are your limitations right now? Not what are they used to be, not what do you hope they could be, not what are they going to be tomorrow, not what are they if you had more money or more time or more support. Like, what are they actually?
Yeah, how do you know?
Well, your own emotions and your own experience provide the best guide for that. Your emotions are driven by the limbic system, that's the emotional circuit in the brain. And it is constantly paying attention to all of your different limitations about you're hungry, you're tired, you're worried about some consequence or failing at work or someone yelling at you. And all of these things activate our limbic system and create emotions.
Mhm.
It's just that the way we interpret those emotions aren't always helpful. So, for example, you have a limitation based on being a human being that you have to eat food, right? That's just a description of your biology. But that doesn't mean you have to eat food right now. And like you could wait till later in the day. You could wait till tomorrow. You could probably be fine for a week. Hmm. But at some point, you have to eat food or you're going to die. And that's just like a basic limit that everyone has for being human. But your particular limit might be even sooner than that because you're like, oh, but I want to have energy to play with my kids and I want to feel good. The fact that we all have this biological limit is the same for everyone. But where exactly the limit is when it starts to infringe upon the other things that are important to you, that is different between different people. So I might be fine not eating for 8 hours, but you might get really irritable and like you don't want to feel irritable. Or maybe I don't care that much about feeling irritable. Maybe that's because I'm a man and people are fine with men being angry and not fine with being women angry, women being angry. And so there are differences for each of us into like where the actual limit is because we have lots of different things that are important to us. And that just reminded me also of this notion of being comfortable with discomfort or ignoring discomfort in our feelings. That's something that a lot of women get really good at.
Mhm.
And uh, that is an amazing ability that a lot of women have. And like men are complaining about all these things. But sometimes we can get too good at ignoring the emotions that are trying to tell us about a boundary that we have and actually performing at your best to do that consistently. That is to perform at whatever best you're capable of right now. You want to become aware of your boundaries as quickly as possible. Does that make sense to you? Do you see why that's important?
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. I think it's definitely important to the way that you're describing it kind of reminds me of like how we need to be like conserving our resources because we don't have it like we don't have everything. Like a lot of the phrases that you gave last time had to do with like declining tasks because you didn't have like the time to, for example. And like that's a great example of like, we often have to set boundaries when we have time restrictions, when we don't have a lot of time to do something, or when we don't have the emotional bandwidth to do something. Another thing was that something that you talked about, even though like a lot of these phrases that you gave us were outlining ways to say no to things, you were also telling us about how boundaries are really how you say yes to the things that you want to do. And I think a lot of us are hesitant to set boundaries because we don't want to be the person who says no, no, no. But you were totally right with that. I love that you
Yep.
said
But like when you are saying yes, but what you really mean is no, like you often have multiple boundaries. And I like to think of this sometimes in the realm of sports because it's easy to see and understand the concrete nature of it. So, like, Michael Jordan is famously like really competitive and he doesn't care about being an asshole. And if you've watched any of the documentaries about him, it's like, yeah, he's an asshole and he doesn't care about that. And that might be different from you.
that.
And you do care about it. Okay. Well, that might be a limitation that you have in the sense that, oh, if you didn't care about it, well, then you could behave in these other ways or achieve these certain goals. And sometimes what we are frustrated by is our own values. Like, I just wish I didn't care about being a good person because then it would be so much easier to win this game, but like, or get a promotion. But that's why it's so important to quickly identify, well, do you care? And your emotions will be that guide about telling you that there's something here that you care about. And the faster you can identify what that is, then you can stop trampling and trying to defy your own boundaries. Just like where the road is that you can drive on and where the road isn't you can drive on is an important place to understand. And different people have different cars. So if you're driving a pickup truck, well, where that road ends for you might be different than someone driving a Ferrari. But if you
Right.
have a Ferrari, and most high achievers, particularly high achievers with emotional perception who care about other people, your brain is more like a Ferrari. And just because someone else can drive off-roading over here doesn't mean you can or that you would want to. Because if you tried to do it, you would damage your amazingly expensive car. And to continue the analogy about Michael Jordan. So he doesn't care about being an asshole. He does care a lot about winning the game.
Mhm.
And he famously can or could dunk from the free throw line. Like, it's an amazing feat of physical strength and ability and talent. What he never tried to do was dunk from the 3-point line or half court. Like, that would be ridiculous. Like, he would land 10 feet short of the net. Like, he would jump and everyone would be like, what are you doing? Like, that's ridiculous. So,
Mhm.
like, even though he might be arguably the best basketball player of all time, he needs to be crucially aware of what is the millimeter from which I could jump and dunk this ball, and where even just going 1 millimeter past that, I would slam the ball on the hoop and hurt myself and look ridiculous, and everyone would laugh at me. And knowing precisely exactly where that is and how that might shift as you get tired throughout the game. Maybe in the first quarter, oh, I could jump from here and be fine. Ooh, but now I'm tired, or now I'm injured, or now I'm 42 when before I was 28. And like, that line shifts, and because we want so badly to win the game, it feels like those limitations are the obstacle. Like, if I just didn't get tired, if I just could jump farther, if I could work all night, if I could just stop caring about my kids, like, those feel like they're the obstacles to winning the game. When in fact, no, those are like, many of those are constraints that we want. They are important to us. And so we have to always make choices based on what our limitations are. And our limitations are often different based on what's important to us. And the faster that you can identify for your unique brain at this specific point in my life, like, where are those limitations and how quickly can I accept them? Then you stop wasting time and energy trying to change the limitations that you can't change, or you stop exhausting yourself and looking stupid by pretending like you don't have a limit when you actually do. And a boundary is just another word for a limit. Some of our boundaries are just like, oh, well, it's important to me to stay alive. And that's a sort of a clear boundary. But like, you have more things that are important to you. And therefore, you have more nuanced limits that are just unique to you. And so you keep coming back to this question of like, how do you identify a boundary? And there's really two skills involved here. And they sound sort of silly and dumb, and that's why a lot of people overlook them. Like, just like in the your brake stop working example, if you're like, okay, how do I stop my car from crashing? Well, people want you to know, they want you to give us a magic answer. We're like, oh, there's some trick where you press up, up, down, down, left, right, and you do this, and then your car stops working. Like, that's what they want there to be. And that's what they're
Mhm.
hoping, the magic words. If I just say the magic words, the actual answer, though, is like, when your car starts making noise, you should investigate that. Or even before that, well, you should know that your car needs regular maintenance, and you can just take it in even before there's noise.
Mhm.
But at the very least, listening to those little sounds and signals, which in your body and your brain are emotions. And this is where the skill of mindfulness comes in, of just noticing what are the signals. Do you feel like sometimes there are signals that you're ignoring, or maybe ignoring because they don't make sense, or ignoring because they're not convenient.
Yeah, like sometimes I'm somewhere and I feel like I want to leave, but then I like won't allow myself to because of other reasons that I want to be there. Um,
Yeah. Right.
yeah.
Like it would be awkward, or my friends would be mad, or like, ooh, the Uber ride would be really expensive. And that's where it's important to realize, and this is a moment, an insight that I had in grad school when I was feeling like really burnt out on the path to doing my dissertation. And there was this workshop that a psychologist hosted. And I saw the title was like How to Stay Motivated Working on Your Dissertation. And I was like, oh my God, I have to go to that. And the key insight that they shared was about this feeling of ambivalence, of about feeling conflicted, where he was like, well, part of you really wants to get this done because it's important to you to share this work and to help people and to accomplish this. And part of you is like, I'm tired. I need to go to sleep. And part of you is like, well, I just want to go hang out with my friends. And we have multiple different parts of us because different parts of our brain evolved for different purposes. They're pulling in different directions, and we have multiple different emotions because like, well, I'm also hungry right now. And I'm also, yes, I want to get this done by the deadline. I don't want to disappoint my boss. I don't want to disappoint myself. And we have multiple things pulling us in different directions. And because there's not one overriding clear signal, it can feel like, oh, I guess I don't know what I want or what's important to me. But what actually that sense of ambivalence or conflict indicates is that there are multiple things that you probably care a lot about, and they're pulling you in different directions. And so the net result is like, oh, I guess there's not one thing that I care about. But that's where mindfulness starts to come in of like, okay, what are all those different feelings that you start to care about? So I'll give another example with a car. If you're driving and you're running late to a meeting, this is actually more of a, practical example that people might have had where you're like running low on gas and the fuel light comes on.
Hmm.
It might be really inconvenient at that point in time because you're like, well, I have to go here and then I have to go pick up my kids and then go take them to soccer practice and I don't have time for this. Okay. That whether or not it's helpful or not, your car is just telling you like, hey, you're reaching this limit. You you have about um 50 miles left, 2 tanks or 2 gallons, depending on how you drive, that might take you 50 miles. You can feel free to ignore that for that point in time. What is a limit, though, at some point, whether or not you ignore it, is that your car needs gas, like, or electricity, whatever it is. But like, there is a limit. And you can feel free to ignore that limit temporarily. That doesn't make it go away. But if you have a good reason to ignore it temporarily, because like, no, I'm late to this meeting. Okay, that's fine. You can make a choice. Your car will still, let you know, the light will still be on, but you could make a choice to ignore that particular limit for a good reason. Oh. But then if you keep doing that, because it got rewarded, like, oh, well, that light came on and now I still made it to the meeting. Okay, great. Oh, now I'm going to go pick up my kids. Now I'm going to do that. Well, if you just keep ignoring your limits, at some point, your car will run out of gas and it will just be random where you eventually cross that boundary and can't do anything anymore. It's a big headache. If you are aware, however, of the fact that your car needs gas, well, then you can be more intentional and choose, when is the best place to do it? And if this is this thing that keeps happening over and over again, often the solution is, the best time to do it was yesterday. Oh, I can't do that right now, but maybe going forward, I could create a better plan. But you first need to be aware of this low fuel light coming on. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. Yeah. I think that it would be easier for people to set boundaries if they knew like exactly where their boundaries lied. Something else that I was interested in was how you said and maybe this is not something that we can talk about very much now, but you said that setting boundaries is like teaching people how to treat you. And I don't know, thinking about how many of us don't know exactly where that line is, like when our gas tank is at empty, it makes sense that, we are not sure how to treat our own selves and how to take care of our own selves as well.
Absolutely. And that we are often so focused on trying to help other people. And it's a wonderful quality, and you should appreciate that about yourself. But just like on an airplane, when the oxygen mask comes down, you got to put yours on first. It's not because you're being selfish. It's because you're like, oh, my body needs oxygen in order to help other people. So me doing this thing is how I help other people. It's not an obstacle to me helping other people. It is part of how I help other people. And so noticing that awareness is the key first step. That doesn't mean you always have to act on the emotion. Like just like my check engine light comes on, or my gas light comes on, doesn't mean I have to get gas right now. Or my smoke alarm goes off, doesn't mean I have to run out of the house screaming. Probably means I should check out to see, is there a fire? Or did my spouse leave the toaster on too long? The mindfulness aspect is just the ability to be aware of it. So one practical question is to think about a last time that you said yes when you didn't want to. Like, what did you feel in that moment? You noticed it after the fact, but like, did you feel anything? Was there a little sound? Was there a little signal that you just ignored because you're like, oh, it'll probably be fine? The next crucial step, and I work with my clients with this on all the time, is you then need to validate that signal. Going back to the smoke alarm analogy, you should pay attention to your smoke alarm, whether or not there's an actual fire. You don't know yet if there's a fire. If maybe one time there was this false alarm, and you're like, oh, well, that smoke alarm, I can just ignore it. Well, then you are putting yourself in danger. So when you hear the smoke alarm, that is awareness. There's probably something that I should investigate further. It doesn't have to automatically trigger me running out of the house, just like a feeling of hunger doesn't mean I have to automatically eat, or a low fuel light doesn't mean I have to automatically get gas. But oftentimes, those things, the awareness, we don't even have awareness in our brain because we start to have an emotion. But before we're even aware of it, it automatically triggers a habit. And it's the habits that keep us stuck. And so when people start to get better at mindfulness and becoming aware of their emotions, one particular habit gets in the way. And it's the habit that we talked about earlier of ignoring your emotions. So I'm starting to become aware of like, oh, my friends would think this is weird if I left. And then your habit is like, yeah, you stupid idiot, you can't do that. And we have a habit of self criticism, or overriding ourselves, or bullying ourselves, or ignoring those emotions. And that helped us get where we are. But now it's contributing to the problem. And that's why the next crucial step is validation. Not saying that it's true, this emotion that I'm feeling, or what it's compelling me into, just that it's a actual emotion that I'm having that is telling me about something that is important, about some boundary that I have.
Yes, that makes sense.
And the validating it doesn't solve all the problems. Just means I stop getting in my own way. Just like in the runaway car, I could say, well, I shouldn't be in this situation, or my maybe low fuel, I shouldn't be in this situation. Okay. Well, the faster that you can realize I am in this situation and acknowledge, like, yep, I don't want to be, that's okay, but I am. And it's whether I should be or not is irrelevant. And then I can stop distracting myself with self criticism or anger and just get down to solving the problem. And that validation often comes through a self compassion, which a lot of high achievers think means they're just lowering their standards. But like, nope. Self compassion is really about acknowledging the limits that you actually have and then moving forward from there, as opposed to banging your head against the same wall over and over again, or yelling at yourself that you have limits in the first place, because now you're wasting precious time and resources. So I think we're probably going to have to continue this conversation another time. We could talk about this all day, but there's a crucial piece that's missing about before you can communicate your boundaries. Yes, you need to understand where they are in the first place, and mindfulness and validation and self compassion can help you be aware of those boundaries that you're ignoring. Once you're aware of them, though, you might have some magic words to communicate, but how do you hold those boundaries in a way without feeling guilty? Because it's not just the magic words. There's another crucial skill that people need to understand so they understand like what exactly they're saying yes to. So for now, just notice what you're feeling, label the different emotions, acknowledge that it is totally valid as a human being. The human being with your specific brain is totally valid and doesn't solve everything, but it's a first step in the right direction. Does that sound like a good place to leave it?
Yes, I think so. I look forward to our next conversation.
Okay, awesome. And thanks everyone for joining in and look forward to connecting again.
Thanks. Bye.